Play hard and strong all the way. Hold it, please. Try it one more time from the top. What?
Hey everybody, this is TJR.
This is Superfan.
Hanging out with our little friend. And we just finished watching the Disney Plus original documentary film entitled simply The Beach Boys. It's close to 2 hours. It primarily concentrates on the 60s. And I guess the first thing I'd say is, rather than say having a narrator give us their story, you know, someone researches, a filmmaker researches the film, then gives a narration.
Yeah.
Instead, this is, for the most part, the various members of the Beach Boys giving their own oral history of the band.
Yeah.
Through archival interviews, through some newer interviews. Mm-hmm. We do have some interspersed commentaries by other people in the music industry. Music producer Don Was, R&B recording artist and actress Janelle Monáe.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't get Paul McCartney for that.
Yes, given what a unabashed fan he is of not only the Beach Boys but of Brian Wilson, I am surprised they didn't have interviews with Paul McCartney, although they do have archival interviews with him.
Yeah.
But you're referring to newer interviews. There is one snippet of vocal interview that's just over the images where it's definitely him older, because you can hear the older voice. Yes. But otherwise, yeah, he just may have not been available. But I don't doubt he would have wanted to. I think he would have wanted to have participated if he could have.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. They're all giving us their perspective. And I have to say, this is the most interview material that I've ever heard from Al Jardine. And most of it is brand new.
Yeah.
It's the most I've ever heard from him, because generally I just don't ever get to hear too much with him. Whenever anybody interviews anybody about the Beach Boys, we either hear Brian Wilson or we hear Mike Love, but usually it's just those two. Also, this is the most archival footage I've ever seen with interviews with Dennis and Carl Wilson that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it was great to see it and hear it, because we don't get their perspectives very much.
Not anymore.
At least not in well, no, of course we can't. In fact, I don't think it mentioned their deaths at all. At first I was going to say, why are they glossing over that? Because they weren't glossing over a lot of things. They didn't gloss over the abuse of Murray Wilson. They didn't gloss over the drug use. You know, they didn't gloss over a lot of things, and they certainly didn't try to cut any language. And another thing, I remember when Get Back was going to be announced on Disney Plus, everybody was worried, oh, Disney's going to completely clean it up. And of course, that didn't happen. You had them dropping the F-bombs. You had John Lennon talking about masturbation. Yeah. But and in this film, no, they're certainly not cleaning anything up as far as language, as far as any of that.
Like, there was one interview segment with Brian Wilson where he did drop an F-bomb.
Yeah, he did. And then he caught himself.
He backed up.
And he backed up. And it was, it was kind of funny that he would do that.
Yeah,
probably because he was giving the interview for television.
Yeah, they self-censored.
Yeah, they self-censored because they knew he's being interviewed for television. So he backed up so they could edit it out and reset it. But I was thinking at first, why are they glossing over those deaths? But maybe they just felt we don't need to talk about it because everybody knows.
The film was dedicated.
It was dedicated to them at the end. Yeah, the dedications for them were at the end. But yeah, I mean, that aside, though, it's trying to give their version of the story, is what it's trying to do. By using archival interviews and new interviews, it's trying to give their oral history, so that the film remains, the film is just letting them tell us this is what happened.
It's their side of the story.
Their side of the story. And you can tell that this film has, of course, the cooperation of everybody involved. Yeah. That includes Brian Wilson. That includes the estates of Carl and Dennis Wilson. That includes, Mike Love. That includes people who, Al Jardine, Bruce Johnston. There's even interviews with Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fataar, the two guys that joined the band after Brian Wilson, checked out for a bit during the 70s. there was the guitarist and drummer that joined up with them and did kind of change their sound. And they do talk about this period in the 70s briefly, where they were just trying to figure out who they were without Brian Wilson, where they were trying to assert themselves as songwriters. And I'll admit that section made me a lot more interested now to hear that time period. To me, I think you could make a documentary just about that period.
Yeah, I think you could.
Yeah.
The one interview that I thought was very strange was The Bride of Frankenstein. I don't know what that was about.
Okay, you always have to be snarky somewhere. Superfan is talking about Lindsey Buckingham, and more, actually not about Lindsey Buckingham, but his hairdo. And yeah, I was trying not to say anything about that. He was one of the other musicians that was interviewed, and he had some very good insights.
It is kind of the elephant in the room, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone should have told him something about his hair. But okay. Superfan has to make a snarky joke in at least every video.
That's my job.
That's your job. But yeah. But no, I appreciated his commentary too. He was one of the...
Yeah, he had good commentary.
He did have good commentary. Just
His hair did not have good commentary.
His hair was distracting, yes. We now know we'll never get invited to any of his parties at this point. I enjoyed the outside commentaries from the people in the music industry discussing their points of view on them, and also their points of view on how this band struggled. There was one commentary, I'm trying to remember who it was from, and again, we just watched this, and he made this comparison of how with the Beatles, you had four guys that were all musically kind of growing, evolving together in the same direction. And this was reflected in their songwriting gradually as their albums were coming out. But with the Beach Boys, there was suddenly this dramatic shift where they're known for this certain type of sound, songs about girls, cars, surf, and then suddenly Pet Sounds is this kind of quantum leap. And it's too much of a leap for their audience, in his opinion anyways. And I can see where that could be true because the record label didn't know what to do with it. And it just was came from out of nowhere. Kind of as if the Beatles had gone from, say, doing A Hard Day's Night to doing the White Album.
Yeah, but they could have marketed them as competition to the Beatles. They were kind of.
Yeah, they could have marketed it better. And that was the thing. The record label didn't know how to market this. And in fact, they instead promoted a greatest hits album versus this album.
But, I mean, I think that if they had picked up on...
The competition?
The competition point of it, they had both those acts. They had...
Yeah, Capitol had them and they had the Beatles too.
It was a win-win if
they could have made a big deal out of that if they'd if Capitol had capitalized on it. Yes, no pun intended.
Oh, pun intended. Yeah, and Bruce Johnston talked about going to England right after he joined the band and coming back to his hotel and somebody telling him...
Lennon and McCartney want to see you.
They're in your room.
They're in your room, yeah.
Because they wanted to hear
They wanted to hear Pet Sounds because it wasn't out there yet. He was asked to go out there and do some promotion prior to it coming out. But he had the album with him.
Yeah.
And they wanted to hear it. And he said they listened to it 3 times. Can you imagine anybody in our present day? I sometimes say we don't know how to listen to music anymore, but wanting to hear an album 3 times in a row.
Oh,
But that must be how strong it impacted them when they heard it. This film, of course, is, like I said, it's trying to compact a lot. I think it does cover an awful lot. It does cover perspectives that a lot of us probably haven't heard before.
Yeah.
Especially from those who were not founding members or who came in maybe later, like Bruce Johnston.
Yeah, and they did talk about their original guitarist too, quite a bit.
Yeah, he talked quite a bit too. Because Arl Jardine left right before they recorded the first album, and they had David Marks as their guitar player. He was a member there for the first 3 albums, and he finally got upset with Murray Wilson, had a fight with him and quit, and they asked Arl Jardine to come back because he had been with them. He left right before they took off,
He wanted to go to college.
Because he thought he should go to college and, do what his parents, follow in the footsteps of his parents, and then regretted it.
And see how that worked out.
Yeah, and then, yeah, you see? Don't go to college. But yeah, it turned out that when he quit, he was the first person that Brian Wilson turned to because he said, I know he can sing all the parts.
And they talked about the period that Glenn Campbell was in the band.
When Glenn Campbell was in the band. I appreciated the fact that nobody was left out. Even those two guys from the 70s, after Brian Wilson kind of stepped away for a while, when they were trying to be the Beach Boys without him, and they brought in these two new players, they talk about it in the documentary. It sounded like a totally different band. But I think if a documentary can make a casual fan want to hear more, want to explore more, then I think it's done a good job.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people who, when I was growing up in the 70s, I just would say I don't like the Beach Boys outright. I didn't like songs like Surfin' Safari, and on those old hits. I thought they sounded corny, hokey. I couldn't comprehend what Brian Wilson was doing with the vocal harmonies. I couldn't comprehend that. Surfer Girl. I just couldn't stand that as a teenager. And I just hated the whole like California surfer image vibe thing. I was just being very knee-jerk reactionary. You call it a punk rock attitude, even though punk wasn't around at that point. Yeah, it came in the late 70s, but growing up in the 70s, no. Okay. I know you're trying to say, yeah, punk started in the 70s. I remember when the Sex Pistols hit. And in fact, I wanted to embrace that, is what I wanted to embrace. But, but like I said, I just hated that whole thing. Of course, now I've learned to appreciate it all. And of course, for a while there, I was probably a bigger Brian Wilson fan than a Beach Boys fan, in that I had more Brian Wilson solo albums than Beach Boy albums. But as time has gone on, I've gone
full circle now.
Yeah, like I said, I've just gotten more into the older stuff. Oh yeah, we've got Surfin' Safari here.
That's our autographed one.
Yes, we found this at a
estate sale.
Not an estate sale, just not even that.
It was more like a warehouse sale. A
warehouse sale, and it's got autographs on it. We're pretty sure they're authentic. But that's a whole nother story. We don't want to get too sidetracked here. Of all the stories as far as behind the music, and I'm not referring to the VH1 series. I'm talking about just of all the stories that you can delve into about, 20th century pop and rock groups. The Beach Boys story, the more I delve into it, the more I read, the more I hear about, is probably one of the most engrossing and fascinating stories out there. The music aside, even if you're not into the music, it's one of the most engrossing and then fascinating stories. Yeah, unfortunately, some of it is the soap opera of it,
soap opera,
which is a shame. Yeah. Overall, did this documentary work for you?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you learned things that you didn't know before? Because you and I have watched quite a bit on the Beach Boys.
Yeah, I did.
I do too. My only real complaint was at the end. It tries to do what a lot of these kind of retrospective music documentaries try to do, which is get kind of schmaltzy, try to make you feel emotionally try to make you tear up a little bit as they talk about the legacy and all that. They try to get you to feel really strongly emotional. And I don't think it was really necessary to do that. I think the story, the music speaks for itself, in my opinion. But that's my only real complaint.
It does, but it did bring them all back together in one place.
True. At the very end, you've got a scene. You've got some footage. I don't want to say a scene because that's like saying it's a movie. But you've got a moment there where all the surviving members are reunited.
At the beach where they took the...
Yeah, at the beach where they took this picture here. And they're all reunited there, sitting together, having a conversation, sharing some drinks, talking with each other.
What'd you think of Lindsay's hair?
Yeah, what'd you think of Lindsay Buckingham's hair? Oh, yeah. Okay. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment. As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. Hey, buddy, what'd you think? I want to give a big thank you to the patron supporters.
You're fierce and mighty.
Patron supporters do receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. But mostly thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.